Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about 4 ways to win back your husband's heart, even if he said he's done. My guest, Catherine, was overwhelmed and exhausted just counting the number of mistakes that her husband was making with their children. He'd retreated into his work, but when he was there, the tension and conflict ran high. And then she made a commitment to finding a way to fix her marriage. And that's exactly what she did. She's going to tell us how she created a marriage that's filled with not just generosity, tenderness, respect, and support, but also playfulness and fun. Then I'll be giving out the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award, which advises you not to be critical of your partner. So far, so good, right? But then it suggests something that will either cause a Cold War or a blow up. I think you'll see why. All of that's coming up. But first, let's talk about 4 ways to win back your husband's heart, even if he's said he's done. When your husband says something like that, he's done, or worse, if he leaves you, it's devastating. If he has left and even part of you still loves him, it's easy to feel hopeless. It seems like there's nothing you can do since he's clearly made his mind up. But what if the breakdown in your marriage is actually a doorway to a breakthrough? Here are 4 ways to win back your husband's heart, no matter what he's saying. Number 1, delight yourself at least 3 times today. While it may not seem like it right now, your happiness is his drug. But if you're anything like I was when my marriage broke down, you've probably forgotten what being ridiculously happy feels like, or what made you playful, joyful, and irresistible back when you attracted your man. Losing touch with that fun side of yourself kills the intimacy. So, how about trying something different? Put self-care number 1 on your agenda. Do what makes you feel most you, whether it's CrossFit, cross-stitching, or just hanging out with your besties. The more frivolous, the better, I figure. When Connie's husband told her he was no longer attracted to her, she had the sinking feeling that her marriage was about to end. She took matters into her own hands by becoming the queen of self-care. Not only did her husband follow suit, taking care of himself and even lowering his blood pressure, he noticed how attractive his wife had suddenly become. He wanted to spend devotional time together and sexy time. She went from hoping he wouldn't divorce her to having a marriage that's better than it ever was. It's no wonder she reignited the spark. When you do things that make you feel good, your smile and your open body language show him that your marriage can be playful and passionate again. Nobody wants to get away from that. Number 2, say the magic words. The most powerful intimacy skill of all can help you fix a marriage even if it's right on the brink of ending. Which skill is that, you might wonder? It's the one that does double duty. It improves your perspective and improves the response you get from your husband. The skill I'm talking about is gratitude. Let him know you appreciate the things he does to contribute, even if they're small. You might say how happy you are that he takes out the trash or that he's affectionate with the kids. Telling him that you're grateful that he works to support the family can be a humbling but powerful message to convey. One student reported that it was hard for her to say those very words to her husband, but that when she did, he got tears in his eyes. See if you can come up with at least 3 things a day to thank him for. Let him know you're happy about those things. It might feel awkward to acknowledge him so much if that's a big change in the customs and the culture at your house. But since the old customs and culture weren't working to create the love and peace that you want, what have you got to lose? If it's too scary to say that you love that he takes such good care of the yard face to face, use your thumbs and text that message to him. That still counts. Number 3, repair the intimacy instantly. Maybe you've overlooked everything he does to make you happy because it was so much easier to see all the things he wasn't doing. I did the same thing for years. Fortunately for you and me, apologizing for the times you've been disrespectful is like instant intimacy repair in a bottle. Well, not in a bottle. It's in your accountability, in your humility, in your vulnerability. Those are three very attractive qualities that you can roll into one heartfelt sentence that begins with, I apologize for being disrespectful when I, and filling in the specifics. Did you dismiss his thinking when he wanted to stock up on ammunition for the apocalypse and tell him what a dumb idea that was? Did you demean him, joking to your friends about having an extra child to take care of? Did you criticize him for failing at his job search? Did you try to control him? Or maybe you were just trying to be helpful about his diet or asking a leading question about his wardrobe. Like, you're going to wear that? Maybe you told him what you would do about his annoying boss, i.e., the right answer, which he wouldn't come up with if he was left to his own devices. Yeah, I didn't realize those were all forms of disrespect either. But cleaning up your side of the street by saying, I apologize for being disrespectful when I tried to control your spending has a way of restoring the peace in a hurry. Number 4, get some fans. One big detriment to taking care of yourself and to saving your marriage is the naysayers in your life. They're easy to find. Even your well meaning friends and family may say things like, you deserve better, rather than standing for your vision of restoring your relationship, for making it amazing. Listening to those voices can dim your faith that you can right your own ship again. But that's a lie. If you surround yourself with people who are genuinely rooting for you in your relationship, you're going to be more successful, just like any sports team with fans in the bleachers. One way to find those fans is to join the Ridiculously Happy Wife group coaching program to fill yourself up with positivity and possibility and get an entire community of women who are committed to their marriages and standing for yours to be amazing again. Number 5. Well, did I say there were only 4 ways? Here's a bonus way to win back your husband's heart. Flirt your head off. What if you approached every meeting with him, even the kid drop off or the lawyer appointments, as a hot date? What if you dressed the way that makes you feel most attractive? It's always fun to feel beautiful, and it can give you an extra boost of confidence, which is especially helpful when you're feeling afraid. I saw an ad that said, you flirt not because he looks good, but because you do. So true, right? But why go to the trouble? Well, flirting with your own husband or boyfriend, even if he's saying it's over, is completely appropriate in this situation. But it takes some courage. It's what you did when you first fell in love, and that worked great. So why not go back to what worked? Maybe you've forgotten how. That can happen when you've been busy being serious and responsible for years. In those glory days, you were always happy to see him. Why not bring that back? A smile is the most attractive beauty treatment that never came in a jar. Consider smiling and being happy to see him, even if you're still hurt from feeling rejected. It might feel challenging to do, but isn't it true that being with him makes you happy in some way? Letting that show in your face is a great way to send the signal that you're pleasable. It's also a sign that no angry, resentful storm is going to blow him away, letting him know it's safe to relax and stay a while. If your marriage feels like it's falling apart, you might think it's too late to apply these 4 secrets. Well, technically 5 secrets now to winning back his heart. But when women on our campus find the courage to experiment, even when they think it's completely hopeless, to quote Thomas Wolfe, miracles not only happen, they happen all the time. If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. My guest, Catherine, was overwhelmed and exhausted just counting the number of mistakes that her husband was making with their children. He had retreated into his work, but when he was there, the tension and conflict ran high. Then she made a commitment to finding a way to fix her marriage, and that's exactly what she did. She's going to tell us how she created a marriage that's filled with not just generosity, tenderness, respect, and support, but also playfulness and fun. Catherine, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, my privilege and pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, what were things like in the battle days in your marriage?
So, I suppose the hallmark of the battle days for me was feeling resentful. It almost became like my just standard operating system was just feeling frustrated and resentful. It was after our third child was born, and that's when it kind of became apparent to me that this was a big problem. So what had happened is I love family life and raising my kids. I really threw myself into it. Love reading the research and thinking carefully about how to raise my children. And I really wanted to get it right. You know, the information age, I read the books and listened to podcasts and read research and found it all really fascinating and really enjoyable. That then, I think, kind of naturally perhaps led to me feeling like the self-appointed expert on parenting, what the kids should eat, how we should talk to them, how we should help them manage their emotions, how we should discipline them, how they should play. I really was quite conscious about every aspect of it. And the more I learned, the more I could see that there were big problems in the way that my husband was parenting. And I really wanted us to be on the same page and for us to be a real team and a partnership. And so my natural inclination was to try to educate him and coach him. And so I would kind of keep this running list in my head almost day to day about everything that he had done that could be improved. And I thought I was being really helpful. And, you know, it was really important. Obviously, this is our kids and it's the most important thing to both of us. And so I'm doing everyone a favor by really dedicating myself to getting this right. And so we would have conversations in the evenings and I'd sort of go over what had kind of transpired and maybe some questions about things you might like to think about and some leading questions about where do you think that might have come from in your own childhood, kind of becoming his psychotherapist and parenting coach. And surprisingly to me, he's just a lovely, lovely person. And he would tolerate it, but he would often go quiet. And the quietness kind of became, would get longer and longer. And I would kind of think, what's he thinking? And doesn't take me seriously. And he's not committed to this and doesn't want to change. And I'd fill in the silence with all these stories that I would tell myself. And more he would say, I just quickly need to go and do some work. And he loves his work and is very dedicated to his work, always has been, but it became more and more and more. So every evening, on the weekends, and he was also traveling a lot for work at that time before COVID. And so I felt really alone, and we don't live near my own family raising kids. So I felt quite unsupported, and I think I sort of got really accustomed to doing everything myself and kind of had this pressure on myself in a way that like it's on me, I've got to do everything. And so on the one side, my husband and I weren't spending as much sort of good quality time together as I would have liked. And on the other, my time was filled with, just from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep, it was just kids and washing and work. Occasionally I was in between kids, I would go back to work. And so balancing everything, lunch boxes, dinners, the washing, the folding, tidying up toys all night. And I just remember so clearly, like walking through the house, picking things up, putting things away, thinking, I have to do everything. And this is my life now. and, and also just constantly thinking about how this was my husband's fault. Like I became eventually it became so apparent to me that I was blaming things on my husband that couldn't possibly be his fault. Like, something went wrong with the washing and I would feel this rage and blame, just all this resentment and thinking, hang on, this can't be his fault. And so I started to get those little sprinkles of awareness that maybe there's something a bit not completely rational about how I'm thinking, and I'm very logical, and so I could, and in a conversation, I could overwhelm him with all of the reasons why he was deficient and all of the reasons why what I was feeling was because of something that he had done or not done, or because we weren't living near my family and I wanted to be. And I would just overwhelm him with all of that. I just had this awareness start to emerge that, oh, maybe there's something here that I am not being completely fair, or that this isn't completely objective.
Yeah.
That I might have something to do with what's happening inside my own head and my own heart. And I was just desperate for my life not to feel like that. And there was also a lot of good. We've always had, like, he's just a delightful person, an incredible father, always wanting to help others. So we still had a great bond. We weren't kind of heading towards a divorce or anything like that, but sometimes I would daydream about, imagine if I was parenting with somebody that saw everything the way I saw it, and imagine how easy that would be. And I'm sort of stuck here now, so I can't make that work, but wouldn't that be great if I could change it? And so many other people would see him and see how amazing he is and how great he is, and I would be able to see what they were saying, but I couldn't feel it. Every time I would hear them commenting, or like, he's such a great dad, he's so involved, or he's always wanting to help you, and he's such a nice guy, and I'd say, yeah, he is. But it didn't do anything.
They knew the truth.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you don't see how hard it is. So, yeah, I just became really wanting to enjoy family life. And I really love being with my kids. I love parenting. I love family life. It's just fantastic. But I wasn't enjoying it the way that I wanted to. I couldn't even relax when we were all together, because I would be so triggered by everything that my husband did. Like, it would only be 5 minutes and he would give the kids something to eat that I didn't want him to give, or create competition where there didn't need to be, or something that I would react to. So I just found that I couldn't even really enjoy our family time. I was just tense a lot of the time, and we'd go away and I couldn't really tell before we were leaving whether or not we'd have a nice time, because he might do something really terrible, and then that would make me feel, I'd react, and then it wouldn't be fun. So I couldn't, family time, weekend time, holiday time wasn't the sanctuary of togetherness that I wanted it to be. Yeah. And then after our third child was born, actually, my parents came up to help, to give some support. And actually, we had my mum and dad, the last night that they were with us, sat us both down, and we actually had a bit of a couch conversation with my brave parents. And I'm quite feisty. I defend myself. So I really do see this as a brave step from my parents. And they said, we can see that you guys love each other and you love your kids, but something's got to change. For the sake of your kids, you're not, like, there's too much conflict. And yeah, you're not meeting each other. They didn't take sides. They were very respectful, and they get along well with both my husband and myself. And they wouldn't have, I don't think he would have said anything if he hadn't known that it was a bit of a risk for him, my dad, but he kind of took stock of the strength of his relationship with both me and my husband. And so that was hard to hear, but also, even in that moment, I remember looking at my husband and kind of smiling, like, yeah, see?
Oh, I've been trying to tell you.
Yeah. And so I think from that point on, we both were kind of committed to working on our marriage. And rather than focusing on parenting, I started focusing on our marriage. And I started to realize that best thing that we can do for our family was to have a calm and peaceful and respectful, loving relationship between each other. So I started on a bit of a quest, and it's turned my researching mind to our relationship rather than how we raise the kids. That then led to an enormous number of couch conversations of sort of us psychoanalyzing how we interacted and what might be the source of all these problems. And I read loads of books, listened to lots of podcasts, and did courses. We did courses together. And, looking back, he's done parenting courses with me and marriage courses with me. He's done so much, but it never had the result of bringing him to my way of thinking. Like, that's what I wanted. And it didn't eventuate. It was like this elusive thing. I'd feel like we were getting somewhere. We were having these long conversations, and we'd break something down, and he'd say all these things that I thought, yes, we're on the same page. And then maybe a week or 2 weeks would go past, and I'd be right back there with resentment and frustration. And I was thinking, are we ever going to get there? Are we ever going to arrive where I feel happy and I can count on you and trust and have total faith in your parenting and total faith in us, and stop having these doubts? Another important point is one of our children has some special needs, and that was kind of all, we were kind of becoming aware of that. It was kind of all emerging during this time as well. So that put added pressure and weight on everything we fed the kids, and how we helped and managed his behaviour. And we were starting to look at using the help of therapists. And I had this real drive to try and do everything I could to help my son and to fix this situation. And so it kind of led to it really compounded this feeling of overwhelm and feeling of exhaustion. So, new baby, trying to help the older child, and the eldest was starting school and doing all the drop-offs and all the pickups and sleepless nights and appointments all the time, and just the stress too of having a tricky problem that I couldn't solve. And it definitely exacerbated how I viewed my husband's parenting and what I viewed as his parenting mistakes. Like the gravity of his mistakes became bigger. The stakes were really high now. And it was like this, it just added a lot of pressure and tension to what had already been there in terms of.
So were you sort of in your head thinking, if he wouldn't be making these mistakes, this challenge we're having with my son would not be as big of a problem as it is? Like it was almost a cause of your husband's the way he was parenting.
Yeah, I think I didn't consciously think that, but he was definitely making it worse. He was definitely the cause of how can we ever get anywhere with this if you're making all these mistakes? And then I think you're probably right that I think deep down I was thinking this is because of you. And
Yeah, sure.
yeah, so it became very emotionally charged. And we were really trying, having date nights and things and spending lots of time together. And I used to, we'd arrange to spend some time together he was quite excited. He arranged a date night and I would bring my laptop on the date night and I could see his face falling. And I was thinking, oh, you don't want to have these conversations. You're always trying to avoid conversations, including things like money or the kids or therapy, all the things that we couldn't talk about because he was so busy with work. And I was thinking, we can relax and have fun together once we've sorted all this out. Then we can relax and have fun together. So it was just like we could never escape the magnitude of all the things we had to resolve and work through. And I kept thinking, like, I'll be respectful, I'll be happy and joyful when there's something to be happy and joyful about.
Just as soon as that happens, you're
Yeah.
getting ready with
Yeah.
that joy and happiness. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, he sounds so sweet. And so I just love that he was still so excited to spend time with you. And I hear, and your position sounds very lonely, heavy. I'm tired just hearing about like all the appointments and I mean, the challenges and trying to, yeah, stay on top of everything. So, I mean, what did you do?
So, well, we tried lots of kind of experiments, I suppose. So when my youngest was tiny, we didn't have any babysitting or anything. So we did some date nights at home and it was we were sometimes doing them up to 3 times a week. So we'd put the kids to bed and he would actually make dinner. And we'd go and sit at a special table that we'd only sit at for these date nights to try and, create this feeling of being outside of the house and outside of our routine. And I remember actually one evening I'd listened to a podcast of something about just letting someone talk and being quiet. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to experiment. And they were sort of talking about if someone can just talk themselves through something, you don't need to be fixing it. Like there's power in just letting someone talk something through. And I was kind of experimented with this myself of like, my husband was sharing something that he was worried about and I had all of these questions to ask and things to challenge and points to make. And I held it in and I just let him keep talking and then would just express interest and ask for more information. And he talked himself into a resolution that was way more insightful than what I was ever going to say. And it was this big moment of, wow, how I show up makes a big difference as to how these conversations go. And it was just these little sort of little tiptoes into awareness about how much power I had to shift this dynamic. And we did some courses and things as well. We were trying it, and it was I'd have these moments of awareness, and then we'd kind of get into trying to talk about how you were raised and how I was raised, and getting into all these heavy conversations, and it would just all go like 10 steps backwards. So we were really trying, and I had actually enrolled in doing a relationship coach training course with someone, because I was so committed to this, getting really finding the answers. It was like a personal quest for me. I know that so many people have these experiences of conflict after kids, and they're not on the same parenting page, and they want to be, and there must be a way. There must be a way to talk together, to resolve your differences and parent as a team. And it became this real quest for myself. And we'd sort of, every time I was looking for the answers, it just wouldn't result in us being more connected. And one day at the very end of, it was like a bonus section of a course that I was doing, that I was becoming increasingly concerned about, because everyone that was doing the course seemed to be being advised to leave their current partner and go and find somebody else that was better.
Oh,
I was thinking, well, when there's kids involved, it's not so easy to just, think, oh, well, this is it.
Oh.
Can't fix it, so we need to find someone else. I was thinking,
And
but that doesn't
there's
help
definitely
me.
adults involved, right? I mean, that's not good for them either. But anyway, yeah, okay, sorry.
That's right. That's true. It's not
Yeah.
helpful
Uh.
across the board. Yeah, but for me, I was thinking, I'm losing faith in this teacher, because what I want is a harmonious family life, and I don't want to feel like I've just picked the wrong guy and that's it. There's nothing more to be done or said.
Mm-mm.
But deep in the bonus section, it was actually an interview with you. And I, to this day, don't know why it was there, because it actually refuted pretty much everything that was in the course. But I'm taking it as a divine intervention, because I heard this interview and I was so connected with you. I thought, oh my goodness, this is me. She's me. I just connected to your personality and your challenge of that it really takes that women have a particular power and influence, and that being controlling and disrespectful, no matter how well intended you might have been in becoming that way, it doesn't get you the result that you are looking for. And I thought, that is so true. This is my life. I'm just so desperately trying to do this right, and it's not. And I know that my husband, objectively, I could look at my husband and think, I know you want this too. Why can't we get this? I just downloaded your audio book, First to Kill All the Marriage Counselors, and I listened to it upstairs and very, very quickly went through the whole thing. And just, it was every single example that you gave throughout the book. I did it. I did everything. I commented on what he wore. I gave him helpful feedback all the time. I wanted his help, but I wanted his help doing things the way I did them. And if he didn't do them the way I did them, I, gently tell him all the reasons why we do it this way, why this is better. Next time, can you please do it that way? And like, there wasn't an example that you brought forward in your book that I hadn't done. And I thought, oh my goodness, like my stomach really dropped off. Like, I have been doing so much to try and change how my husband shows up, to get him to hear me, to get him to change. And I hadn't even thought for a second that the only person that I can change is me, and that if I change, he'll change. Like, or that if I change, I might not need him to change so much. It if I could just love him the way he is.
Oh.
And I remember I actually went downstairs because I had been quite open with my husband about doing these courses and trying to find these solutions, and that I felt this real calling to try and help other people in this situation. And he was very supportive because he always is very supportive. And I came downstairs and said, I just listened to this book, and she outlined everything that you can go where you can go wrong. And I have done everything. And he said, have you done everything right or everything wrong? I said, like he's, not wanting to presume, not wanting to get into trouble. I said, everything wrong. And he said, oh, I just wanted to hear you say that.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, ouch.
Oh, it's a humbling moment.
It was a humbling moment.
Oh,
And, I enjoy it. I actually felt, I need to feel this. I need to hear this. And it was just an immediate energetic shift for me of, having to defend my territory, having to stand up for what was important to me, having to work out how things needed to be and then work out a way to make that happen. And moving from that to, what do I need to learn here? And just curiosity about myself and how am I showing up and what impact is it having on how people respond to me. And so, yeah, that first sort of moment of that humbling moment, it felt foreign to me, but it also kind of felt good because finally there's a way forward that I have some influence over. And, I can never stop in having control over how I show up. Like I always have something I can do. There's always something. And, it's just so empowering. Like you can transform any situation by showing up differently or looking at it differently. And so I immediately, fortunately, this relationship coach training that I had been in hadn't yet started, and I'd just been doing the pre-work and I hadn't yet paid. And so I quickly signed up for your coach training. So I went from reading the book to signing up for coach training and thought, this woman's worked it out. Like I had been trying to find what's the formula that people can follow that will work in any context and help any relationship, no matter what their personality types are. And I also was looking at my friends' marriages whom I admired and who I thought, you've got really great relationships and you're both happy. And, I would read about, go and talk to your partner about how they were raised and ask if you can give them feedback about all the things that they do wrong. This is in the previous course. I was thinking, you cannot imagine.
For worse relationship advice. I'm going to
totally. There's so much. Yeah. And I would always think, well, I can't imagine my friends doing that even for a second, or their husbands or partners sticking around for it. Like they would never have those conversations. So it just, I wanted to find, what's going to work for everybody. And your skills, the more I looked, and learnt, and I listened to all your podcasts and listened to the book again. And, I'd actually done so much reading about attachment theory and hormones and everything that had been a nugget of gold for me that had rung true was also in the skills. So I knew that it just everything that had already resonated and been helping me was captured in how you'd written it and all the skills. And I thought, I felt like, such a burden has lifted because the quest is over. Someone else has figured this out. So, yeah, and then the real work began of, when coach training started, the relationship had already really shifted a lot. And my my thinking had shifted a lot, because of implementing things like just not criticizing anymore and not giving my point of view immediately, and just focusing on listening and listening to understand and saying, I hear you, and just trying to hear what my husband's perspective was or what his heart message might have been. What's he trying to get across, even if it might be grating me or making me react. And that made a huge impact. We were talking more. My husband was working, like retreating to his study less, and I had stopped pursuing him for time together, and he started to seek me out and say things like, "We haven't spent much time together for ages. I'd love to spend some time together." And it's like, yeah, great. And instead of, when he was working, I used to feel like, oh, he's working, he's choosing his work over me, he's choosing, he's just always going to work all the time. He works all the weekend, he doesn't see how much I do, or what impact it has on me. And instead, when he would go and work in the evenings, I would go and do something for myself. I'd go and read a book, read your book or another book, or have a bath. And I started really meditating before bed, which is something I had been dabbling in and found really helpful and life-giving for me. And I actually looked forward to having time to myself when my husband was working. Like, great, you work, I'm going to go and do something for myself. And I also, another thing I stopped doing was doing everything, and I just would put boundaries around how much domestic work I would do in a day. It didn't matter what the state of things were. If I was feeling exhausted, or, I even actually said, 8 o'clock, that's it, tools down. And then I'll go and have, an hour and a half to myself before I go to sleep, because I need time. I need to be happy. I started to realize how important it is for my whole family to have a mum that is showing up as her best self, and that is happy and joyful and can see the light of things, and not be weighed down by all of this pressure and responsibility. And I also tried to be more grateful about seeing everything that my husband was doing for us and expressing that. And it was hard to start with. It was like, I don't want to acknowledge all the things that you're doing because I'm doing more.
Right. I remember that
And I, yeah,
very well. And
yeah.
it's the opposite of resentment in a way. You have to be in the resentment to be in the gratitude. So it
Mm-hmm.
felt like so how did you get yourself to do it though?
Yeah, I did. And actually going through the coach training really helped me to really focus on that, because I had been doing it before I'd started working with the coach or being in a community of other people who are committed in the same way to me. I'd listen to things and I'd pick up the skills and I'd express my gratitude for 2 days, and my husband would be so much happier and be doing more. Because previously I'd been like, if I tell him that I'm really grateful for the fact that he brought in the washing, he'll think, oh, I'm so good, I brought in the washing, I don't need to do anything else. I had been withholding all of that. And I did do some experiments of, when I express gratitude, he does more. He's got more energy to do more. He wants to find more to do. But then after a little while, I would slip back into my old ways. And then it was when I was in the group setting and had that accountability, and also that really expressed commitment that, I'm thinking and talking about this regularly, that I really was able to embed that as a practice and make it my new normal. And oh my goodness, my husband does so much. Like, I have the best husband around now, and I always did, but I didn't bring out his best. and like he will make the lunch boxes. Lunch boxes used to be the bane of my existence. Like I'd put the kids to bed, do the dishes, and then do the lunch boxes. And it was this big production line, and it would take another hour sometimes of getting things out and making it all and putting things away. And now he does them in the morning before I'm even downstairs, and he gives the kids breakfast. He's always been great at that, to give me some space in the mornings. He is the does often does more of the laundry than I do. He shares my son's therapy sessions. I expressed to him that the therapy was becoming overwhelming. Like through the course, I became aware that this was more than I could manage. It was making me feel resentful. And I started to think about resentment as something I'm allergic to. Like, oh, I can feel myself getting resentful. I'm like, I can't tolerate that. So something needs to change, either the way I'm looking at something or how much I'm doing or how much time I have for myself. So I expressed to him one day, like, the therapy is really overwhelming. I think I can't do it all myself anymore, and all the appointments. And he said, yeah, I'll share it. And so we share it. And that then doing the therapy on my own also had the result of getting all of the recommendations of everything we had to do differently. And then I would have to be the one telling him. And I thought, this is too much. Like, it's just the weight of it, the burden of being in charge of how my husband parents is too much. So, and it's terrible for our intimacy. So
Felt really familiar, probably, right?
yeah,
That was kind of the old way. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I realized this dynamic does not work for me. And so he shares the therapy, and his influence and just being able to have his brain, thinking about these things. Like sometimes he's like, well, I'm not sure about that. And previously I would hear that and think, you're not committed, you don't want to change, we're not on the same page, we're never going to solve this problem, and go into deep turmoil about it. Now I think, okay, what's he saying? Even if I might react with fear to begin with, I can feel it. I'll just put it to the side and hear what's his point of view. And often it's great. And even sometimes I'm not 100% sure, but I just love the fact that I'm not alone in it anymore, that it's on both of us, and we're working this out together. And, one of my, I think you call them like spouse fulfilling prophecy, like me really speaking out what I wanted was for us to be a great team. And so I would start saying, we're a great team. And I would, when I was expressing gratitude for the things that he was doing, I'd say, we're such a great team. And he has started reflecting that back to me. We're a great team. And, we really, anytime that I'm feeling overwhelmed and kind of getting back into old patterns of feeling a bit negative or concerned or fearful, and it's also genuine emotion, comes and says, like, we can sort this out together. We'll work it out. And previously, I think he maybe even did say those things, but I heard it as, you're dismissing what I'm feeling, And now I can really hear it, like, and feel like I'm not alone. I'm not in this together. Like, actually receiving his help, receiving the support that he always wanted to be giving me. But because I wanted to control how he did everything and give him feedback on everything, it became difficult for him to be himself and provide the support that I was asking for. And now it's so much more genuine and free. And sometimes I think, I used to call myself the primary parent. because I did more of the care. And I would think, I've done this for so many more hours than you, and you're sort of playing catch up because you don't have as much time with the kids. And now I really feel in many ways he is often the primary parent, because on a weekend or something I'll be spending time for myself, and I'll think it's not even primary. We're the same. We're a team, and it's not how one person's doing it better than the other person or anything like that. It's
That's kind of an amazing contrast, though, to what you used to feel, which is that you knew the right way and you were the main one and you'd read all the books and it was your job to show him. So this is just tremendous to feel. It sounds like you feel he's your match and you're not alone. You're supported.
Yeah, that's right. And I've also let go of that striving for perfection in how I parent, because what I've realized is what it did in my life was to create a lot of tension, and the stakes were really high on everything. And I now just focus on being the best mother and me, and how showing up the best I can in our relationship. And I still think there's enormous value in thinking about how you do things, and I'll always be a researcher.
Yes.
But it's for me, and if I do it without trying to control the people around me, then I have way more influence, and they see what I'm doing and think, oh, I'll do that too. That works. But if I say you should really do it this way, they'll kind of probably, just like I would, find every opportunity to do it the other way. So, and I keep thinking to myself when I come up against that urge to control and to improve something, is that I have the choice to try to control my husband, which I don't actually have control over anyway, or I can have intimacy and leave him to do him. And for my kids, the best choice that I can make is not trying to make him the perfect parent. It's to have intimacy and to have an intimate home. And it just brings so much more peace. And that one day, early on in the skills, like my husband used to come down really hard on the kids and get really frustrated with them, and I would tense up and think, oh, they're only tiny. Like, sometimes they need, and sometimes they need like notice before they moving out of a game they're playing or something. And he is so gentle and a gorgeous father, but sometimes he gets stressed or tired or whatever, and he can have a short fuse. And I would freeze up and I would think, don't contradict your husband in front of the kids, but I wouldn't be able to support him. I would, like, he was dad doing flipping out, and I would be talking to him about it later when the kids are in bed.
That's right. He'd be hearing from your representatives about this situation. Yeah.
Oh, it's so nice to laugh about it now. But when I started practicing the skills more and really trying to show him respect, even when he was doing something that I felt uncomfortable with, I'd say, Daddy's asked you to pack up. It's time to pack up. Or I'd say, Daddy's said this, so that's what we're going to do. And previously, that would have been so grating for me, of like, Daddy's not the head of this house. I'm an empowered woman. And now I see it as just fostering intimacy and respect. And I want exactly the same from him. Mummy said, whatever. I'm treating him the way I want him to treat me. And it's actually very respectful and empowered. But one of my kids said, when I said, Daddy said it's time to pack up, he said, why are you agreeing with Daddy?
Oh, You're busted, huh?
Yeah, like such an insight into, oh my goodness, what have my kids been experiencing this whole time? Like, I thought, I'm zipping my lips. So there's no shame on me. I just haven't backed up what I thought was unreasonable. But to my kids, I was never agreeing or backing up my husband, and his experience was really frustrating. And so the more I back him up and respect him and express my complete faith in him as a dad, the better he is, and the more relaxed he is, and the longer his fuse becomes. And I'm kind of jumping around, but it's just been so life-changing to let go of these really high standards of perfection that I had for myself in how I raised the kids and did everything, to just focusing on being the best me in the moment and looking after myself first as a duty of care to my whole family, and being grateful for everything that I have, seeing the best in everyone, bringing out their best by focusing just on their best and not focusing on what they're doing wrong all the time, according to me, what they're doing wrong. And just letting go of control has also been just so life-changing, because the pressure of being responsible for everything is gone. Just little things like, my husband never really read the emails from the school or the kindergarten because I was on it. And it wasn't that he wasn't interested in it, but I was all over it. And if he tried to get involved, he'd probably get a bit of tension from me. And now he is just as likely to get people ready he knows what's happening, and he gets people ready for school or kindergarten, or he'll respond if something needs to be done. I just don't feel that burden of being overwhelmed and exhausted in motherhood anymore. And I can certainly get there. My kids are still little, so, can still have broken night's sleep and tantrums and sickness, but it's not my standard operating procedure anymore.
It's not where you live. It's not your address anymore.
Yeah. And I know, like, last week, one of my kids was quite sick, and over the weekend I was feeling a bit cranky and frustrated, and I knew what to do. I knew, like, previously I would have those feelings and feel hopeless again. Whereas now this is just temporary. I'm depleted, and I just need to think about what I want and then express that in a way that's inspiring. And I know that I have the support around me, that everyone wants me to be happy, and my husband definitely wants me to be happy. And my whole experience of raising these kids together, and the family time, I used to be able to relax and enjoy family holidays or weekends, and now it's just so much fun. And my husband now, it was hard to get him to commit to taking a holiday because he couldn't be sure about how he'd feel about his work. And so it was always difficult to extract the time to make a holiday, and often we'd have nice moments, but it would be tense at times too. And now my husband plans the holidays, and as soon as one's finished, he's planning the next one. And he will, take off work early, and he's got bikes for everybody, and he's got these gorgeous routines with the kids, and we all go bike riding, or sometimes I stay at home and sleep or read a book, and he takes all three kids out for big bike rides, and I'm like, I don't worry at all about how he's going to manage behavior or what it's going to look like if if a kid has a meltdown. He's got this. And sometimes it goes pear-shaped, but he manages things beautifully and completely differently to how I manage things. So, and the holidays are just lovely experiences. There's no tension. There's no disagreements, or I can just relax and he relaxes and the kids love it, and it's everything that I had wanted and was pushing for and working so hard for, and feeling was always going to elude me. And yeah, it's all possible. I don't want to paint a picture that I never have difficult moments or the urge to control. Sometimes I totally slip and do go back into old habits. And now, instead of my husband completely just retreating, there's enough kind of emotional safety that I can apologize and he accepts my apology, and I'll shift my mood. He'll make a joke and I'll just go and take care of myself and shift my mood, and we're back. So yeah, it's just so empowering to know what to do when things get rocky, and where to turn.
How would you describe your relationship now?
It's really connected, and I have a lot of faith in him. I really respect him, and I respect him as a father. I respect him as a parent. Even, there are some things that I kind of think I do them differently, and I think probably he could probably do them slightly differently too. But I don't dwell there. That doesn't define him as a parent anymore. And there's just a lot of respect, and we have each other's back, and we're both working on ourselves. Since I've been doing all of this work on myself and trying to show up as my best self and making time for myself and my own kind of growth. My husband's been really inspired by that too, and he's doing heaps of, he's tidying his desk, which was a long time since he's had a tidy desk, and he's just, I stopped saying anything about it, and he's reading books and getting motivated and doing heaps more exercise and really ambitious and making plans and dreaming big. And I feel like our relationship is us both kind of watching each other grow in our own independence, in our own lives. I'm not all over what he's doing, and he is totally supportive and respectful of what I'm doing, and we admire each other. And there's just so much playfulness and tenderness, and he makes dates now. Like the date nights that we did have was all orchestrated by me, and now I just say, I'd love to go out. Sometimes I don't even say that, and he's surprises me, and he's arranged the babysitter, and arranged that we're going to go and see a movie. We hadn't seen a movie for 4 or 5 years, because even if we had tickets to go and see a movie, like someone had given us a voucher, I couldn't come to terms with using the 2 hours that we had together that week watching a movie when we needed to talk about so many things. I couldn't relax, and if we just relaxed and had fun and enjoyed each other's company, that would be wasting our time, because we've got so much to resolve. And now it's like we're seeing movies again, and he's taking me on dates, and he chooses the restaurant, and it feels just like when we were first dating, and it's bringing this romance back, and just not having any expectations and just being delighted with whatever he's doing. Like he'll bring me breakfast in bed, and on a Sunday morning, or maybe it's a Saturday morning, anyway, one morning or weekend, he'll take the kids out and go to the bakery that's got my favourite things. It's a bit of a drive away, and they go and choose mummy's favourite things, and they bring them back, and I get it in bed, and I just feel really doted on. And he always wanted to do that, and I didn't. I sometimes would receive like a cup of tea, but it would be like, oh, thanks, rather than oh, thank you. I love this. I love having tea in bed, and just really luxuriating in it all, like really feeling like a bit of a goddess. And I never really let myself have that experience, because there was so much resentment. I couldn't feel like a luxuriating goddess. And now when I do, I can see my kids love it, my husband loves it, I love it. There's also just so much sharing of the load in our relationship. Everything is shared. And like my husband was taking my youngest to his childcare. He just started childcare and he had took on the drop-offs and the pickups, and he said, I'm not that. I had chosen a daycare that was a bit out of the way because I thought that it was the best. And my husband said, I'm just not sure about this daycare. I'm not sold on it. And previously I would be like, I spent lots of time researching that, and I think. But I had kind of had a kind of inklings too when I had been picking him up and kind of thinking, not sure. But I hadn't kind of given that much oxygen because I think I didn't have the space for it. And my husband said, I really think we need to look somewhere else. And I felt the resistance and then said, yeah, okay, I hear you. Do you want to see what other options are around and let me know what you think? And I had already toured lots of ones in the area, and he found the one that was really close by and thought that would suit my son really well. And I had some reservations about it. And I said, okay, I trust your judgment, and let's give it a go. And he had done the tour, he arranged the enrolment, was the main point of contact with the childcare centre. And anytime I kind of offer, do you want me to? No, I've got it. Mm. And he loves solving problems and loves just getting it done from go to woe, And my son had his first day yesterday at this daycare, and my husband was completely right. It was so much better. Like he had cued to things that I hadn't cued to, that my son would do well in a bigger space to play in. Like at this childcare, all the kids play in the same area, and so there's big kids and little kids and lots more room to explore. Whereas at the other place, they just had a smaller area and it was just that room. And he just felt that Gabe didn't have enough, room to run. And I put Gabe down on his first day, and he was so happy and exploring the different areas, and so much happier than he had been at the previous place. So I was able to text him and say, you were so right. This is the perfect place for our son. And he loved hearing that,
Yeah.
Just receiving his influence, and that builds respect too for me. Like it's sometimes when you first start, it can feel quite like you're not being your genuine self, that you're withholding what you really think or what you really feel, and that, you might be betraying yourself or something. But the more that that's why it's so helpful to have these exact phrases and things that you offer, because you're really retraining your brain and retraining your body as well, like these physical responses of fear or stress, and the more you do them, it becomes your new normal, and it elevates your view of yourself, your partner, the world. It really is a personal transformation journey. And and so it's, instead of focusing on the negatives like I have done for most of my life, I'm really practicing these new muscles of just focusing on the positives. And the more you do, the more I receive, I really have to stretch myself sometimes because my husband does so much now. I can feel like I'm not doing all the things that a mum should do. I can have these sneaky thoughts in my head of, maybe I'm being lazy, or that's really something I should be doing, or, very disempowering beliefs that, and now it's like stretching myself to receive, and, like my life doesn't have to look like other people's overwhelmed, exhausted life.
Things will get as good as you can stand, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And another ridiculous change is, my husband kind of worked out that for the price of takeaway each week, I can have, like, had a babysitter last year, and she's continues to help us. And I've previously refused to spend any money on babysitting or help around the house if I wasn't working. Like, we only get help when I'm earning, and that was this rule that I had for myself.
Yeah.
And and I was very controlling about the money and the budget and savings and paying off mortgage and all these kinds of things. And my husband was saying, well, maybe we need more time. Maybe you need some time to do the things that make you happy, or maybe we could have some help. Like, maybe that would elevate our lives and we can earn more. And I would say, well, once we're earning more, then we'll do it, always finding a reason. And we started getting some help from a babysitter, and then she's an amazing cook. And my husband realised, for the price, less than the price of takeaway each week, we can have her come and just do some cooking, some meal planning, so you don't have to spend half the day on the weekend cooking. And I like to cook sometimes, but when I'm cooking all the time, it feels burdensome. And it is the best money you could ever spend on, I love making things from scratch for the kids and for myself. And we can do that, and it's not expensive and it's not burdensome. And it's like this creative solution that, I would never allow myself to receive, even contemplate. Like, that's something that the rich and fancy people have help in the home like that. Like, especially in Australia, we don't really have nannies. It's really something that only the super wealthy sort of have. But it's not actually.
Yeah, fair. Yeah.
Just proving that.
Right? As you're explaining it to me, you're like, wait a minute. What would you say to a woman who is kind of stuck where you were, where she's that woman walking through the house picking things up by herself and thinking, if he doesn't do anything, or I have to do everything, or it's always going to be this way, I'm just full of resentment. She wants to have the beautiful family life. I think that we all dream of, right? When we're little girls, like, I'm going to grow up and have these babies, and we're going to have these wonderful holidays together, whatever, right? So she wants to have what you have. Where should she start?
I think the first place to start for me was honoring how I was feeling. And, I'm feeling like my head was full of resentment, but my body was tired and I was depleted. And it's very hard, even today, it's very hard to avoid those traps of thinking when you're exhausted. So I think it's just realizing that the best thing that you can do for everyone in your life is to tend to yourself first and put some boundaries on how much of your energy you can give out and what you need to do to restore yourself. And it can be really hard saying that to someone that's, got a newborn baby or little kids. And like, that's where I was. I discovered these skills with a little baby, with
Newborn.
3 children, but little kids. And it is possible to put yourself first. I never used to put myself first. Even eating food, I would find myself angry at kind of 3 o'clock in the afternoon and realize that I hadn't really eaten much, hadn't eaten properly that day. And
had a little bit out of one kid's plate or something, right? And that was
exactly. Yeah. Or just, grab a cup of coffee and a snack, or just grab a quick piece of chocolate or something to tide you over, which makes you crash later. And now I meal plan, like, I always have fresh food in the fridge and snacks that are healthy, and I really prepare my food the way that I would prepare my children's food, because I need to be cared
Good
for.
mom. Yes. Good
Yeah.
mom, Catherine.
Yes. So
Uh,
I always put myself last and kind of felt that that was my obligation, and it's not. And the best thing that you can do for your kids is to look after yourself really, really well. Um,
I love
so
how you described it as service to your family.
yeah, that's I needed that to really help me to give myself that permission. And once you've got some stores of energy, or at least you know that there's things that you can do that will help you to feel more like yourself again. For me, it was a bit of an experimentation of sometimes I would do self care, like I would go and get my nails done with a friend or something. That's not really my thing. That doesn't, for
Mm.
me, it was just like pouring water through a colander or a sieve. It was just, I would I'd press pause on my life and then return and just press play again and didn't feel any better. But understanding that self care is not these prescribed activities, it's taking time to do the things that make you feel good again, that make you feel like you again. And for me, it was experimenting and exploring with what that is, and reading books, and even like I love this personal development sort of work. It makes me feel excited and energized, and that's what I need. But I also love going for walks and running and doing yoga, and it makes me feel good. So yeah, cups of tea, like really sitting with them and going, I'm nourishing myself. This is for me. And yeah, I think that's definitely has to be the first place that you start when you're feeling resentful. And then from there, a big thing for me was expressing gratitude for everything, like finding the things that my partner was doing, finding all the ways that I was being supported, and really focusing on those and receiving those, and then relinquishing control of those very high standards that we can put on ourselves that can make life really challenging. So it was not only relinquishing control of how my husband did things, but also relinquishing control of these really high standards or high expectations that I would get things just perfectly all the time, and that it's just not achievable, and it's really not healthy either. It doesn't lead to a good place. And so just really letting go of all of those shoulds and just being right where we are. And sometimes things have to fall by the wayside. And
At 8 o'clock, the house tools down. Things stay
yeah,
as they are. So, what would,
yeah.
what would you say if you could go back in time and talk to Catherine, knowing what you know now? What would you say to her?
I think knowing my personality, I would say to myself, this starts with you. That you can have everything that you want. It can be the way that you want, but not how you think. You can't control your way to the outcome that you want. You can't make this happen by controlling everyone, but you do have the power. You do have influence, but it all starts with you. Like the only person that you have control over is you. And just, yeah, start with you, start looking after yourself, and go within and get curious about how you're showing up. And obviously, if I could whisper, go and find Laura Doyle's book, I would. But
Why
but
not? It's like
yeah,
you're time traveling anyway. You might as well.
yeah.
Say
It's
whatever
a
you
big
like.
shortcut. It's a very big shortcut. But I was piecing it together, and sometimes I look back at my journaling before I discovered you, and I read back and think I was getting there. I was finding things that were helping, and there was insight there. And but it's such a shortcut. It's such an amazing shortcut. You don't have to figure it out on your own. And also just being drawn into a community of people that are really just impressive people. like you can say sometimes you hear like The Surrendered Wife or something, the first book that you wrote, and you can recoil and think like, oh, submissive or like doormats or something, and it's just not that at all. It's the people that are drawn to you are the people who maybe have a bit of a controlling streak.
Maybe.
They're impressive people. They're people that are just a joy to be around and call me on to a higher standard, to a more dignified life, to joyful, happy, playful kind of life. And having those people as friends and support group and being exposed to coaches who are further down the road, it's just really embeds the change and gives you that support of, we become like the 5 people closest to us. Like just getting in this world has been really transformative. So I would definitely say, if I'm time traveling anyway, I'd say go find Laura Doyle and all of the people that are attracted to her, because your people are right there. Yeah, I think I would also just say, I don't know if I would have been able to hear it back then, but just to see who my husband is, just listen to him, like listen to try to understand, like don't react to what he's saying, just listen to what he's trying to tell you. And sometimes he doesn't say it with the verbal fluency and immediacy that I might have, but it's there. And just have those listening ears and an openness to just understanding where he's coming from and not presuming the worst anymore. So, yeah, I have really had an exceptional man by my side this whole time, and I've known it, but I haven't been able to feel it all the time. And, sometimes we have people that around us that want to support us and want us to be happy, want to make us happy, and they'll do extraordinary things in the pursuit of making us happy, like probably bigger things than we could ever imagine. And we block it off, not intentionally. Like I wouldn't want to make myself, I'm still talking to myself here, so I wouldn't want to make myself feel guilty or ashamed that I'm doing, that I am where I am, because it's tough. It's tough having little kids. It's tough having little kids away from family support and when your husband's working a lot. And so I would give myself a big hug, but I would also just really want to give myself a big G up that I have the power to change this, and it's easier than I think. It's more immediate than I think, and I don't have to do anything to anyone else. It's just me. It really is quite miraculous when you look back and you do the then and now. It's like, oh my goodness.
It is quite miraculous, and your story really illustrates that. You have enormous accountability. It's very impressive to me how accountable. Even as you're starting out the story, you're describing how wonderful your husband is and how hard it was for you to accept his help when it wasn't quite the way you would imagine. So it's just everything's just laced with this enormous accountability, which I love. And anyway, it just is. It's so impressive to hear how you've transformed your family, and I can only imagine how it impacts those kids. How are the kids impacted?
Yeah, they're a lot more calm, and we just have these wonderful family moments. And I do get these little feedbacks from my kids. Like my daughter said to me the other night, something came up, and it was kind of expressing a habit of expressing frustration, or kind of why did this get put here, or like little criticisms like that. It was somebody else that had said that, and she said, you used to say those things, Mum. And I said, did I? do I now? She said, no, you don't talk like that anymore. But you used to. You stopped. And yeah, the kids are also delightful with each other. Like they can fight, certainly, but the way that they make peace is beautiful and is mirroring the way that me and my husband make peace. And I also just so see, if my husband and I are dipping, they'll dip. And if we're elevating, they'll elevate. They just reflect everything back. They are such a mirror. And yeah, the kids definitely more comfortable. Yeah.
Well, and what a great feeling as a mom to know that you are role modeling the very thing that you'd like to hand down to them. Fantastic. Congratulations on what you've created, the beautiful domestic life, right? The family life that you dreamed of, that you knew was possible. You never gave up looking for and trying to work towards, and that you've just been so dedicated to. I mean, you're just a beacon of hope for what is possible. And I'm so happy that you shared it with us today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Laura. It's been a pleasure. If I can give hope to someone that was where I was, and I would love to be able to do that, because it's not a nice place to be, and it's such a joyful option to take.
Yeah, you make that very clear. So I love that.
Thank you.
If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
The advice that I find most despicable this week is from an online article that suggests you stay away from saying critical things like, "You're so self-centered. Of course you forgot my birthday." Fair enough. Instead, the article suggests expressing how you feel by saying I statements. It says, for example, "It makes me feel like you don't value our relationship because you forgot my birthday." The article goes on to say that this opens the door up for a more constructive conversation rather than the other route, which is only going to have both parties on the defense. There's no I in the sentence, "It makes me feel like you don't value our relationship because you forgot my birthday." I guess you could call it an it statement. I statements have earned the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award before, and they will doubtlessly win it again in the future, or else their weird cousin it statements will. With so many variations on this terrible advice, I statements are the gift that keeps on giving. Every week, there are so many standout I statement candidates for this beloved section of the podcast, where I throw my drink in the face of the offending advice and walk away that it's just getting silly. I do enjoy pointing and laughing at these I statements where the message is, don't criticize your partner by saying they're self-centered. Instead, criticize your partner by saying, "You don't value our relationship and you forgot my birthday." That way they'll never notice it's a criticism, right? It's such a complete fail. Because if you follow this suggestion, you might think that you're taking the high road and telling him something mature and respectful, but also truthful. Actually, it's none of those things. But the worst part is that you're going to get a hostile response, or at least a distant one. And then when he erupts with defensiveness and a counterattack or makes himself scarce. Because saying you don't value the relationship is definitely an attack. You might think that proves that he really doesn't care, or that he has a terrible temper, or that he just doesn't know how to talk about feelings. And then you'd get to be right, but probably not happy. Another possible explanation is that he doesn't like being criticized and attacked, and he's reacting as most mere mortals do, by defending himself. So, if your husband forgets your birthday, does that mean he doesn't care about the relationship? It could mean that he's tired of being pummeled with critical I statements or it statements, and so afraid that he wouldn't succeed in making you happy that he didn't make an effort. Telling him what a disappointment he is at this point is only going to make things worse, not better. If what you're wanting is to feel adored, to feel taken care of and special, then, well, I know a few magical skills that will help inspire that in your man, but they require much more courage, a lot more humility, and also accountability than these ugly I statements. And for that reason, the advice to say, it makes me feel like you don't value our relationship because you forgot my birthday, is the very worst relationship advice I've heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, we'll talk about 5 ways to inspire him to be a better man. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that when it's done, our new dryer plays the same song as an ice cream truck, and I want to run out the front door and get a popsicle.